Well, we're back, people, and in this case, I just want to do a summary of our trip to England, what we got out of it, some things that we found that are good learning opportunities for people travelling to England, and also some of the experiences that we had that perhaps had the biggest impact on us. And I thought we could start with Ruth here, and Ruth, you can tell us about what some of the experiences that you got the most out of by coming here.
Well, I really loved the whole history. It made history come alive. Going from Roman all the way through the different ages, Hadrian's Wall, the gold mine,
The chapel in Southall.
the chapel or the minster in Southall, where there's evidence of a Roman villa, and on top of that is this incredible church that's been built. So just layers of history. And I was saying to Jonathan as we went around different places, for some crazy reason, nursery rhymes came to mind, and mulberry bushes and Dick Whittington and the Duke of York, of course.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing that you were having nursery rhyme imaginations, and I was actually having dreams at night, dreaming about being with the Romans or fighting Romans on behalf of the Britons, or seeing William the Conqueror come across the channel and wanted to take over England. And it's like my dreams went back another 2,000 years, whereas back home my dreams are limited to 200 years, of history. It's just how the land refocuses or gives you another depth of how you think about things in your subconscious. And it's interesting that you talk about nursery rhymes. I'm talking about dreams, but it's fascinating seeing some of those churches. I mean, we're all churched out now. I don't mind if I see another castle, home, park, plantation, minster, water gardens, or whatever, again, for at least a bit of time. But I can remember the first experience was walking through that church in Ireland and seeing stones that were laid in 1130, less 100 years or so after the Normans came into England. And the Normans were laying it, and they built these amazing churches above Roman roads. And you can see the line there, and to actually imagine what, in this case, a millennia of worshippers would have worshipped about in that whole millennia, and the hundreds of thousands of people that walked upstairs, and their dreams and hopes and aspirations over a millennia. I mean, we think it's exciting that back in New Zealand we can talk about a century or a couple of centuries and what people thought over maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 centuries, but we never talk about a millennia. And I guess maybe in 300 years, I guess New Zealand can start talking about a millennia. But it's just fascinating to actually see that. And what are some of the other things? What about the trips in the camper van? Did you enjoy that?
For the most part. I think it was a really good way to do what we've done. Just having the freedom to change a plan, to go where we wanted to go, when we wanted to go there. To spend extra time with your family in Yorkshire. It had its challenges with the lovely narrow roads.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the fact that we didn't have to go even into campsites every night.
That's right.
That was a bit of fun, even if we did Sarah saw some creatures that she didn't really fancy.
Yeah, a snake.
We think it was a snake. We don't know.
Yeah. But the great thing about that was we would decide in the morning over a cup of coffee what we'll do that day, based on the area that we're in and what area we would like to finish the day on. And so it was a continue. We never stayed in one place twice. We did stay in one place twice, but on separate nights, different sequence nights in Yorkshire. But we certainly were able to plan and change and move. We thought one day we were going to leave Yorkshire and head up to Northumbria, but one of my cousins gave me a call, and there we are. We're back in Yorkshire again for another day, and that was a great day with Stephen and Carol, and seeing the family sites from their perspective out of home and Spalding Moor. But I tell you, one learning curve that was interesting was, of course, when you come to England from New Zealand, you have to transfer in your head what a British pound is worth, and it's roughly worth 2.3, 2.4 Kiwi. So when you go to the pub and you buy a pint and some fish and chips, you start to think that maybe £12 might be just too much for dinner. Well, if that's your thinking, have a look at Wetherspoons. Now, I'm not doing an advertisement, but search for Wetherspoons. It's a franchise throughout England, and they, instead of paying £7-8 for your beer, it's £2.50, and fish and chips for £5 thereabouts, £5-8. You can actually have a great meal, and it's not badly priced. So we ate in the camper van quite regularly, and we did buy out a few times by going to a few restaurants, and then we basically once every third night would stop in a campsite and pay for it to be there, so we can use the washing machines and showers and the like, and plus empty out the vehicle. So that was a great experience. I tell you, I recommend that. Certainly recommend a camper van. Gives you the freedom. If you had to buy Airbnb places or hotel accommodation, then your last day in a particular area is your last day. You can't stay, you have to move on. Whereas in the camper van, you can renegotiate, rechange, and we tried to get to London a little bit earlier than what we did in the end. So we got here with a few days spare, but we thought we could have had a week here, which meant that you could have gone to one of the shows. It's one of the things that Ruth and Sarah wanted to do, was go to a show.
And we didn't have too many RV movie moments, did
No.
we only almost drove off with the power connected once.
Once.
And we didn't. So
we didn't.
We did really well. I think we did.
Somebody asked a question, and because we started every morning with, okay, cabin crew, prepare the cabin for takeoff. Didn't go down lightly in a lot of cases. One particular person didn't like hearing that. Hey, Sarah. But in the end, she got me back when she said, make sure your trays are stowed away or served up or something. You cheeky monkey. Oh, no, well done. We had a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah.
I think 6 weeks is probably better length of time than 4. Not enough time in 4 weeks. 6 weeks, we could have done an extra week in Ireland and had a camper van in Ireland and gone around parts of Ireland. Would like to have gone to Cork, would like to have gone to Belfast, and anyone knows Ireland, that's both ends of Ireland, and that would be another experience. We have to come back and do that. We never looked at Scotland, so a week in Scotland again won't be long enough, but it would be a lot better than nothing in Scotland, which is what happened this time. And we'd like to have seen Scotland, and we'd have to come back and do that. We enjoyed Cornwall. What were some of the highlights of Cornwall? Besides the narrow streets.
Well, I mean, of course, seeing where your family comes from.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty special. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good time.
Yeah. I think you should turn that off.
No, we'll get over it.
Yeah.
Get over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you can tell, it was an emotional time while we've been away.
Yeah. I mean, the other side of it that's a bit sad is seeing, all these villages with churches in them. Yeah. And how much the church was part of the centre of villages, but, that is diminishing, and a lot of these churches are hanging by a thread. And,
Yeah, that's right.
there's a small little group of faithful people.
Yeah.
still trying to maintain, you know, a heritage.
A faith heritage. I mean, a lot of this. I mean, the whole Western culture is based on a moral code that came from church life, and we as a civilization are getting rid of that foundation and re-identifying what the moral code is through laws, and laws are never justifiable in controlling a population. The best way to control a population is through a moral code, and if we can't acknowledge a creator, can't acknowledge a God that gave us that moral code, but decide instead to come up with something else, then our future is doomed as a civilization. I guess that's a bit sad looking at it, because a lot of the towns that we went through had churches that were just far too big for the town. You could see that they put a horrendous amount of finance into building stone buildings that were huge. So obviously that was a great importance to the community at the time when they built it. Even if they might have spent a couple of generations building it, they did it, and they've stood the test of time. The building's still there. The testament to their faith over the generations is still there. And how you'd have something like Seville, a town of Seville with just a few thousand people and a great big minster. Now you could say, well, it was a satellite to York, but then if you drove around the villages around around Seville, they all had huge buildings that would rival St Andrews or St Mary's in New Plymouth. So it just, and in a lot of ways too, the culture was that the church was part of the governance of an area as well. So that did help that the so-called council building was the church building, and that went together. But it was just great seeing the heritage, listening to people. Actually, that's another experience we had, was talking to people. Like in Ireland, we'd stop in for a cup of coffee and there'd be an elderly gentleman in the cafe. And in this case, I was thinking of one particular gentleman that we met, single guy, never been married, and he had a reasonably good Irish accent, and started talking about life for him and what it means to be alive in Dublin today. And we shared our stories and he shared his, and it was a great experience. You had an experience of talking to an elderly guy on a bus, again talking about life in general, and just hearing what he had to say about life in Dublin. And if anything, if we only came here to see places or see where family came from and things like that, I don't think we would have got much out of it in comparison to spending time with people and talking with people.
I mean, we met them everywhere, and I guess another highlight, you know, was when we were in St Austell and seeing the church that, you know, my grandparents married in, and there's now, you know, a vibrant live fellowship, you know, with a real heart for their community, running a parent centre and a cafe, you know, and just sitting down with them and talking life and faith and history was just incredible, wasn't it?
Incredible. And that was a great experience, just to that couple in that church had been praying that day for an opportunity to talk about their church with someone new, and that they could talk about Jesus with somebody new, and they, all day no one came into that building for a cup of coffee or anything, and just as they were closing, just as they were packing away the coffee machine, we walked in. And I had some questions for them as we walked in, because it was inside a church building, and we sat down and had a chat, and they were just blown away that they waited all day, and just when they were about to give up, the answer to their prayer came, and together we just had a great time. Then there was another time where we were up north, in that family
we were
home.
at Craigside.
Craigside. And we're just walking along, admiring the flowers. We hadn't quite gone into the building, and I heard someone behind me talk about what types of plants these are. Well, that's using my cue to actually have an answer, because of my horticultural background, and I just turned around and I said they were crocuses, and we talked about the crocuses and how important they were for collecting the stamens for saffron. And she asked me about my accent and where I came from, and I said, well, we're from New Zealand, we're in a place called Taranaki. And she said, oh, I think I know Taranaki well. I lived in New Plymouth for a bit. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. And it's quite astounding how the conversation went, because she said that for a while there, her and her husband had to take over a Methodist church in Whitehall while the vicar or the pastor went on holiday for 2 weeks. And I thought, oh, really? What was the name of the minister at this church in Whitehall? And she couldn't remember. And I go, well, hang on. I got Ruth to come over, and I said, well, this is Ruth. Her father's name was Noel Billinghurst. And she goes, that's the man.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So we had a great catch up, and
great talk.
And met some of her family, and those kind of encounters, you just blow you away, and they're really special.
Totally unbelievable.
Yeah, just reminds you how small the world is.
Two things: how small the world is, and how God never forgets. Yeah, it brings people back together. It's always about family. Yeah. And of course, I've got to say one thing to finish, even though I don't know that I want to finish on this point, but there's a whole lot of things. I mean, we had some highlights up in the hills. What was that called? The
Pennines.
The Pennines. 40 mile per hour, cold winds, coldest night we can remember on the trip. We had to turn on the water heater to get the van warm because it's just cold that night, and 40 mile per hour winds, and there was nothing around us except this on the top of this hill, and there's heather in every direction, cloud cover. We could see Newcastle lights way off in the distance, that was a memorable night. There was nothing negative about it. It was just one of those sort of situations. But I just loved the driving around England. The roads smooth, no real potholes, even the single lanes. Now you could say to me the reason for that is because of the population. I don't think so, because the number of cars on the roads equated to any other road in New Zealand, and yet our roads are potted. You know, so it's not population; it's the number of people using the road exactly the same. As something's wrong with our roading system in New Zealand, that we can't have roads as good as, if not equal to, anything that England has. Even their single lane roads in places where there's no population, well tarred, well maintained, well sealed. I don't understand the wildling nature of growing tall grass, barberry, right up to the road, and the stinging nettle right up to the roadside. Don't quite understand why there has to be a wildling environment for insects and everything else when there's so much other land that insects can have. What's this one, Sarah? Every time we're looking for a sign to see where we are, we'd miss the sign because it's in behind a barberry bush or in behind a boxthorn hedge or some ivy had grown over it. So there's a lot of signs that just are useless because we can't see them till we're just about to pass them, and then we see something and we think, what did that say? What did that say? Well, if it wasn't for Google and the Google experience, we would have probably got lost, but Google helped us through it, and that was good. But one thing I'd like to talk about is how amazing family is.
Yep. And that's probably where you should leave it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, catching up with Tamsin in London when we first got here, fantastic. And being able to walk into a room and instantly have a Kiwi conversation. There's Tamsin, and from her perspective, first thing you notice how easy it was to communicate because we're talking Kiwi. So well done, Tamsin. Love to have caught up with you. Like to have caught up with you again before we left, but that's how it is. And then we went. Then we caught up with David, Raper, and Hillary in Dublin. Had a meal there. Great day. Thanks, David and Hillary. I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone out, but we caught up with the Lamberts in Yorkshire. Wow. That day we walked through Green Lane, down my grandfather's old village. David, Raper, Keith, myself, Ruth and Sarah. That was a great day. We were given the opportunity to look through my old granddad's house by the new owners, or the owners that are there. Wow, it hasn't changed since 1969. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. We saw Grandma's old bungalow, caught up with Auntie Betty and her house at Carpooney. The house was called Carpooney. There's a bit of history behind that, but just ask me one day, I'll tell you. Those who know. And then Auntie Ellen, we caught up with the day before in North Duffield, and she's a great lady, mate. I'm so glad, Auntie Ellen, that you've actually turned out okay. Oh well, and David and Charlie.
And then Margaret and Pauline, of course.
Yeah, Margaret and Pauline on their boat. Margaret on their boat with Cliff, on their narrow boat. And then we caught with Pauline and Andrew in their apartment and saw their boats that they look after in the trust on the canals. I mean, that's a great experience, just having these canals all over the place and meeting people and talking to people on the canal boats. And being able to pick up, one lady gave me her channel of life on the canal. And I thought, well, I'm going to follow that up when I get back to see a little bit more about it. So, well done. And then the Lamberts on that Saturday, Sunday after church, went to my granddad's old church. What was that? Yeah, I know. And then we caught up with the Lamberts at lunch. And I've got to say, guys, your mate, great bunch of lads. You turned out well. One of the things that really made I remember the most about coming to Yorkshire in '67 was that I had cousins, and living in Hawaii, I never had any cousins, so I always felt alone. Going to school, living in our city where we lived, but when I came to Yorkshire that time in '67, I had cousins, and I think about the Lamberts as far as those cousins go. But that day we sat there with this 20 plus of us sitting around these tables in Witherspoon restaurant, and catching up with you and listening to a story and going back to Paul and Linda's house for afternoon tea that day. And you're a great bunch of lads. You've all done well. And Keith, mate, you're just a good friend as well as a cousin, and we had so much fun together. You remind me of the days when we used to dig up your mum and your auntie's vegetable gardens in '67 and make trenches and pretend we were in World War One, as young boys used to. So it was good. And then finally coming to London, catching up with Pauline and Andrew. I know. But more, and then arriving here at Lynn's and John's house in Wadding, London, which effectively makes this our last day here. So thanks, guys, and this is just a memory of that trip and some of the experiences, hopefully that we don't forget. And to each of my cousins, we want to see you down under. We want to see you in our neck of the woods, and we want to spend time with you, showing you our nation and our people. But no doubt, one day I'm sure we'll come back. Thanks, people. We'll catch you later. And probably this won't be my quite last post for our trip, because we've still got a couple more. We've got Singapore, and we got our trip home from Auckland. So well done, guys, and we'll see you around. Thank you. Look forward to catching up with you all again.